Peace everyone, Unmasked here and welcome back to another Pastel tutorial. Today we are starting a new Pastel project, and this is a landscape that I am grateful to have received from one of you, Heidi. Thank you again for the beautiful reference photo. What the goal is for today is to get the sky done. As usual, I am working on Clairefontaine pastel mat, and I have the reference photo and line art, of course, downloadable on the post over on Patreon. And what I have here down at the bottom is my masking film. I kept it rather simple. I did have some line work in the clouds to kind of help you put those clouds in the right location. I'm just going to freehand it. Yes, so I just have the rocks cut out, and I'm just covering the bottom third of the page. So everything from there is just going to be freehanded, and next week what we'll do is we'll do the rocks. So that's when we'll get into the rocks. But for today, let's just get to the sky done. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to take my nice dark blue, and I'm going to just start sketching in where these clouds are. So I'm going to start with the outer edge of the clouds with this dark blue. And I'm going to just do this really, really lightly. And then once I have the placement of my clouds, what I will then do is I'll just fill in the backdrop with blue. And I'm just going to kind of ignore the clouds for now. I was having a class with a student not too long ago, and basically I was just discussing the different ways to approach clouds, and it really doesn't change between mediums, but with pastels there's two types of clouds, and there's a cloud that is the sky. There's clouds that are the sky, and then there's clouds that are on the sky. And clouds that are on the sky are usually the wispy ones. You can see some of the clouds, there are little wispy clouds up here. Those are clouds that I refer to as clouds that are on the sky, because you can ignore them, fill in the blue, and then add those clouds later on by just taking a bit of light gray, light blue, and white. And then there's clouds that are the sky, and those are the clouds that you want to color in from the beginning. You don't want to try to color over top of the sky with those clouds. And that is this whole body of clouds down here, where the sky essentially is completely stopped up at this edge. That's why I'm coloring this edge the way that I am, because this body of clouds is covering the entirety of the blue sky. And so that's where I've come up with this term of clouds on the sky versus clouds that are the sky, because this big body of cloud is the sky as opposed to being on the sky. And it just helps kind of being able to identify clouds that are the sky and clouds that are on the sky, so that you can think of which technique would best serve getting the sky to look the way that you want it to. Hello Gail, Barbara, Pumpkin Spice. Very, very happy to see you all. Alright, now that I have the back kind of shaped, I'm just going to use the same dark blue to start applying a nice generous layer of pastel. And remember, when you're working, when you tape off your edges the way that I do, just make sure that you're always working away from that edge in towards the paper, so you don't get dust underneath of it and prevent you from getting those really nice clean lines that we all love. going to take a little bit of time to fill this in. No need to rush. Keep it nice and soft pressure with your pastels. Keep it really loose so that you don't get any hard lines in the sky. And if you guys have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them. I'm glad that you were able to make today's live stream as well, Gail. It's good to see you here. Tomorrow I'll be doing a working stream, and I'll also be working with pastels. Probably start that much earlier. Might even be evening for some of you in the US. If not the evening, probably around midnight or 3 in the morning. I'll start that probably about 9 o'clock in the morning my time. But it won't be a tutorial, so you won't really miss anything other than just seeing me live stream a work day. Be making a time-lapse video. I suppose if it is a tutorial at all, it really would just be how I make my videos. I suppose I'll probably be answering a few questions about that tomorrow. Okay, I'm gonna set that blue aside. I'm gonna get another blue. This is another dark blue, but this is it's getting a bit warmer here. This is like a warmer dark blue, where this is a nice cold one. So this one, it's just a bit brighter. It's a bit bluer blue, if I were to try to describe it better. Don't be afraid to go really dark with your blue sky here. Don't be afraid of those colors, because in order to get that really like dynamic separation between the sky and the clouds, you have to get the right values, and in order to get the right values, you really have to utilize those dark blues a lot. It's very easy to lighten them up later on by applying white, and we'll be using a bit of white, a bunch of grays, mostly grays really, for those undersides of the clouds, in order to get those clouds to look shiny, like the light hitting them right there at the top. We have to make the clouds all around that quite dark, because it is a relatively dark gray. It's hard to, in the beginning, it's hard to see those colors as they are, but the truth is they are quite dark. Alright, now I'm going to get a nice cobalt blue. So this is inching towards the mid-range of the blues, and this is probably the lightest blue that I will use for now anyway. I just want to get a really nice layer of some pretty blue in my sky before taking the time to blend out or anything like that. And I'll probably do one more layer of the really dark blue, just to get the top part covered a bit more. And you don't have to worry too much about the accuracy of the tops of your clouds. I mean, as long as you have plenty of diversity and you avoid creating any patterned shapes, then you're going to be pretty good with your clouds. So don't stress out too much about, you know, trying to stay outside of the clouds, because we'll apply our grays over top of this, and that's where you'll want to be a bit more precise, especially with your blending. But really just coloring them in gives you a good placement for your colors. Alright, I'm going to grab that really dark blue now, and I'm going to do a little bit more on the top. And I wish that this set, I'm still using the Rembrandt pastels, and the more that I use them, the more I'm becoming less of a fan of them, ironically. And I've been looking for a pastel set that I think would be okay for beginners, people that want to get into pastels. I mean, the Faber-Castells are still a really great set, and I even used some of them last night on this little project that I started. But the problem is I can't buy them individual, and that makes it very difficult when I run out of one color and I have to buy a whole set just to replace that one color. It's not really cost effective. So I'm looking for a nice set of pastels that are affordable for people that, you know, just doing this as a hobby, and then also a good enough quality for me to justify using. Alright, I'm going to grab my little sponge brush now, and I'm just going to start at the top and try to smooth this out. Oh, hello Philip. Good morning. I'm using very, very little pressure. If you use a lot of pressure to try to like get the pastels to spread out faster and farther, your paper is going to eat up this sponge extremely fast. You're going to have bits of the sponge coming off, and then you're going to have to replace the sponge. And the truth is it's really, really unnecessary, because the harder you press with the sponge, yeah, you do spread the color out faster, but you also lift more of it off, creating excess dust that is just a pain to deal with. I've had a few questions and / comments in the past asking me how do I not create any dust? And the truth is, if you're really light-handed with your sponges, they either absorb the dust completely, or they press it into the paper. And so if you're struggling to get like the blend between colors, just know that applying more layers and going softly with your sponges is going to help you get those blends a lot easier than scraping and pressing really hard. Because I haven't bought any new sponges. I've been using the same ones for a long time, and even though a few of them are kind of falling apart, for the most part, all of them are completely still usable. See, I still have some of the paper showing through even after doing some blending here. And even though maybe if I, you know, grind this sponge into the paper, I'll get a little bit more coverage there, but it's just much easier to reapply a bit more pastel and to get that better coverage than it is to grind my sponge down to nothing. And don't worry if you get some of the blue on the edge of your clouds here, don't worry about that, because we'll cover that up. In fact, it wouldn't be bad at all to allow some of that blue to show up on the edges of the clouds, as even though those clouds appear to be completely separated from the sky, they do actually have a very small gradient from the cloud to the sky. They aren't completely separate. I'm recording today's live stream because I want to do I'm going to complete the sky entirely today, and then I'll probably upload that video next week as a short how to do clouds with pastels, a short little tutorial. As I have a short little tutorial coming out tomorrow of the, what project was it? I'm trying to remember which project it was. All the potted flowers, the still life that we just finished a couple weeks ago. Alright, it's a really nice deep blue, which is exactly what we want, but just not quite enough of it. So I'm going to grab the really dark blue that I started with, and I'm just going to lightly apply a bit more of this color. And I'll come down about halfway with this color and then use the medium blue that we had, our second blue, the ultramarine blue, to create the gradient between these two colors. This color here I wish was better. This color gives me a lot of trouble. I like the color, but when it comes to applying it and blending it, it fights me a lot. I'm not sure what the deal is with this dark blue here, but it doesn't seem to want to be friendly with other colors, and it kind of struggles to blend, so that's why I'm only using it really, really lightly. Trying to avoid any pressure at all so that I don't create unblendable lines. Because if you get too hasty with your pastels and you kind of scribble them in there with too much pressure, those lines that you unintentionally create can come back to haunt you because they don't blend out completely. They kind of scar the paper a little bit. So just be careful with that pressure that you might go too far and scar your paper. Not sure if I can get them there, but for mini learning I have been using Mungo Gallery pastels. Oh, I've never heard of those pastels before. I love the square. That's one thing that drives me nuts about these pastels. I don't like cylindrical shapes. I feel like they're a really poor design for pastels because it does not give you any flat edges except for the heads, which are completely worthless. And I like the corners. You have 8 corners on the rectangular prism, so it gives you a lot of ability to get smaller details than with these rounded bits, because you only have like the one edge and you have no like point. It's just a flat edge, so you can kind of get some straight lines or whatnot, but yeah, that's about all you can get with them. I've switched to the medium blue by the way, the ultramarine. At least I believe this is ultramarine. Could be cobalt. One thing this set misses. This set misses a deep purple, which I would love to have in my sky here. I might actually incorporate a tiny bit of purple, but I don't have any really deep purple, so maybe I'll just grab a bit of red so that when I blend out it turns purple. I'd love to have the top part of the sky just hinting at a little bit of purple, so I'll just add some red and then those colors will mix together nicely. Yeah, this is the cobalt, that's the ultramarine. This is brighter. Cobalt is much of a brighter blue. So switching to that now. we go. Alright, now let's grab, I'm going to grab, this is kind of like a maroonish red, maybe even a touch of orange in it, but I'm just going to add a little bit of this near the top. Maybe. I'm not sure I like the way it feels. Yeah, okay, I'll just add a tiny bit of this very lightly at the top. And when I blend it out, it will just turn my blue a little bit more purple there at the top, because that's all I want. And I'm going to start blending at the top also. Yeah, that gives me a little purple tint that I like. Well, not making the sky brighter. That's what I needed to avoid, because the purples I have are much brighter than that dark blue. Alright, yeah, this part of the sky is looking nice and vibrant, very bright, which is exactly what I wanted. Now I'm going to grab a couple grays for the clouds, and for the most part, the darkest gray. Yeah, the darkest gray is probably about this shade here, and then I have this gray here, which is my lightest gray, which is about the lightest gray that happens in the clouds. So I'm gonna just start with this lightest gray, and what I'll do is I'll just fill in everything that I've left blank. There will still be plenty of room to take white on top of this to get that nice glowy look. So I'm going to darken the clouds in completely, and then once I have like a nice soft blend of my two grays, I will use the white to start billowing out the clouds and making them bright where they need to be to get that layered effect, because we kind of have like 4 layers of clouds. These clouds at the top are like way in the back, and then there's some clouds in front of them and more clouds in front of those. Hello, Lily. So this is the lightest gray that I'm using, and I believe this to be the lightest gray that kind of lays the foundation for the transition between the glowy highlighted parts of the clouds and everything else of the clouds. The goal with this gray is going to be to cover the entirety of the paper up in the sky area. So once I switch to my darker gray to do some of the darker parts down here, the dark parts kind of happen just behind the stone pile, so I'll probably take this gray down to like here and then switch to my darker gray, and then I'll just blend these two together and splash in probably a bit of blue to tint the gray, because right now this is a very neutral gray, and the clouds have a lot of blue tint to them. So I'll use some of that and kind of get that that bluish tint going, and then use the white to start creating the billows of clouds to bring back that cloud-like look. Almost used this entire bit of gray, really wearing it down. Again, I'm using a very light amount of pressure, letting the texture of the paper do all the work for me. I was working on just a fun little project last night, and I essentially was just doing clouds the entire time for the background. You guys will see that project on Monday for the drawing journal. I was in the mood. I had just wanted to create something fun, and I figured it was a good stopping point, and I won't really have much time the rest of this week to work on it. So it would be a fun little project to continue over on the drawing journal. So you guys will see that Monday. You can see what I did. It's kind of a cloudy, spacey scene. That's what I completed. Alright, now I'm going to put this aside, grab the darker gray. And like I said, this is probably the darkest that the clouds get. Yeah, I'm certain of that now that I'm seeing the gray. And I'm going to start mapping out some of the darker parts of the clouds as it's not all focused down at the bottom. So just scribble in some loose shapes. Kind of right here. It's very easy to blend this stuff out, so don't be afraid of your dark grays. Just like with the skies, got to get those values right in order to make these clouds look like they are glowing at the tips. Got to go really dark with them. Alright. It's a nice little dark spot in the cloud right here. Let's grab a nice blue color, I think. So I'm gonna go with this kind of baby blue. A lot of this color will be, the saturation of this blue will be pulled out quite a bit because we're laying it over top of the gray. So don't be afraid to, be a bit generous with the amount of blue that you give your clouds. Because the saturation, like I said, will be pulled out quite significantly in the blending process, as we have already applied so much of this gray. Yes, pumpkin spice. Yesterday's Yesterday's drawing journal was definitely a learning experience for me. Very important one, I would say. It's funny, you know. I sometimes you're very reluctant to blame your tools for, you know, your disasters of an art project or something like that, because, you know, it's not all that common that you justifiably can blame the supplies for the mishap. And yesterday was one of those very rare moments where you could, for me, using the Mitenta touch paper that I had always thought was a reasonable paper choice. I always thought that it could be used and it was good enough, and it explains a lot, because I still have the project from yesterday hanging up beside me, and I can look at it, and there's a lot of like patchiness with the colors on the paper, and I thought it was just me being lazy that I didn't properly blend them out, or I didn't apply enough pastels. But the truth is, it just doesn't take any more pastels, and there's nothing I can do about that patchiness. It's just unavoidable with that paper. And when I realized the reason it wasn't taking anymore, I was like, now I know it's not my fault. Alright, so now I'm going to blend out some more. I'm going to grab a tissue so that I can clean off my sponge a little bit. I'm not afraid of the blue that's on it, but I'm going to just wipe off a decent amount of it. Alright, and you know, I'm going to start up here at the top. You know what? I don't know if I want to use this sponge. Yeah, I will. I think I was going to grab one of my other sponges. Still a lot of that blue. And I'm going to do it right into the blue of the sky. I don't want any hard edges. Not yet, anyway. Keep everything nice and soft. Hopefully I applied enough of my gray to not have to do another layer of the gray. I felt like I had applied quite a bit of it, so hopefully it will be enough to completely cover the paper. I like this oval tipped shape sponge for the sponge knife when doing clouds. It comes in handy, because if you come up to the blue and you tap, you get these nice little curved shapes. They have like a square one and a rounded one, but I like this one. This one's my favorite. Yeah, well, Gail, I just want to make a quick distinction. The paper that I used was the Canson Mitenta touch paper, which is a sanded paper. It's not sandpaper. It's a sanded gesso paper, which I thought was an acceptable surface to work on. But as I learned yesterday, it was not a good surface, because Canson has two versions of the Mitenta paper. One is just the plain Mitenta pastel paper, which has the egg crate texture, and then the Mitenta touch paper. And I thought that the Mitenta touch paper was going to be acceptable. So far, the only two papers, and I even hesitant to say this, that I have found to be acceptable is actual sandpaper, like the UArt paper. Of course, I should order some more UArt paper and give that a real run for its money. But the thing with the UArt paper is it's a lot harder to transfer line art onto, so that makes it just more difficult to work with in general. Whereas the pastel mat is just, it's the standard. It's like when you have the option to work with pastel mat, it's like, why work with any other paper when no other paper works as well as pastel mat does. Yeah, the Mitenta Touch is a sanded paper. Comes on it comes on a semi-thick card, and it has a border, and then it has like this. It has the sanded gesso in the middle of the paper with a kind of like a smooth border edge. I mean, it feels somewhat similar to pastel mat to the touch, but it's scratchier. Pastel mat has a more of a velvety feel to it. It looks like I'm gonna probably need another base layer on the clouds. I want to get them nice and smooth before applying any details to the clouds, but at least with the second layer I can start building the form of the clouds a little bit more accurately. And you can see with that blue that we added, it's dissipated a lot. So there's, you know, just like what I said, the saturation of that blue was going to go away significantly with all this gray for the base layer. Yeah, I probably should have put a little bit more gray down here. This area doesn't quite seem like it has enough pastel on it. A little patchy with the coverage. Well, for now the clouds look pretty uneventful. But trust me, once we get into our lighter colors and start pulling out those highlights, adding in those details, clouds will come to life. Alright, let's see here. I'm just gonna grab the light gray first and just do another quick pass of the light gray. and anywhere, like you can start to see that this light gray is lighter than those areas where some of the darker gray spread out. So I can use this to start building a bit of the details that I see in the clouds. Start laying it out a little bit. The best things about clouds is that you don't have to try real hard to get them to look exactly like the reference photo, because it's pretty insignificant, the exactness, and you have a lot of leeway with clouds. So don't you know, if you want to follow the reference photo to like the absolute precision that you possibly can, feel free to spend that extra time. But I find going through those steps less enjoyable. I kind of like just feeling out the clouds and building the shapes based on how it blended out, essentially, because you can kind of use the shapes that you accidentally create to build the form of the cloud just as easy. So like where this dark spot is, if I use my gray right under that dark spot and kind of follow where it separates, I get like this really nice organic cloud shape. And then it pushes that dark gray behind it, so this little spot now has just become like the face of a new cloud. And it didn't take any precision, it didn't take any practice. It's like, oh, I'll just work this gray right in front of that darker gray, and because it's lighter, it brings it forward. Now it pushes that cloud into the back, and then once I blend out, everything will look nice and soft and organic. Alright, let's do a little bit more of the gray over here. It's a nice little separation of cloud, like right in this area. Comes back the other way, kind of like that. And there's another fluffy bit right in here. Oh, hello, Heidi. This picture must look familiar to you. Well, maybe not quite yet, but soon enough. Absolutely. More than happy to do this project, Heidi. It was a nice looking picture, so it was easy to want to do. Besides, I like using your guys' own reference photos, because that saves me the trouble of having to find them. When you guys send me good pictures, it just makes my life easier. Alright, I'm gonna go with I think not as dark gray. So this gray here is a little brighter than the darkest one. I think I have enough of that down, so I'm just gonna use this middle gray. Let's see what it looks like. Maybe, it isn't enough. I am going to use that dark gray. Yep, so I changed my mind. I'm going to come over here and start doing kind of a little bit of the details. We have this very distinct shadow on the cloud over here, and so I just want to get that laid out a little bit more. very, very light touches. Because it will all blend out anyway, so no need to stress of detail. The value is much more of importance than the precision of detail. And besides, we got plenty more layers of pastel that we're going to apply to these clouds to really bring them to life. So right, let's go in with a little bit of blue and maybe a darker blue. So last time we used this kind of baby blue, and I'm gonna go with like a more of a brighter sky blue, and just get a little bit more blue in here, especially in these darker gray areas, because even though they are pretty much a true gray in the reference photo, I just want to bring a little bit of life into them with some brighter blue. And then once we blend out, of course, this blue won't show up nearly as much. Let's get some cloud breakage. Make that cloud kind of dissipating a little bit. This is how you can fix that shape. So like for instance here, we kind of have like this break in the cloud happening like that. And we got a little bit of blue coming down in here. And just loosely scribble in a bit. There we go. All right, now let's blend that out. We should have some pretty good coverage now. Our clouds will begin looking a bit more dynamic as we've shaped them a bit more accurately with our darker gray and blue. They still won't be much to look at this point, but next up is bringing in some of the highlights, and we'll just slowly bring in our highlights, probably with a bit of kind of an ivory or a light peach color, maybe a touch of yellow. Get some of our clouds a bit golden yellow in those transitions. Some sunshine yellow in there. Got to be careful with the yellow though. Yellow and green, or yellow and blue make green, so you want to just be a little cautious if you do use some yellow in your clouds when it's surrounded by blue. And especially if you use the same sponge to blend the yellow. Make sure your sponge is cleaner and you're not blending your yellow out with a blue sponge, because then you'll just immediately turn it green. at this point you should have a pretty good muddy blue mess. A fluffy, dirty, almost smoke. It's like it's less of a cloud and it's more just like smoke. That's what it kind of looks like right now. I just want to give it a nice blend. All right, now let's see here. I am going to, how much yellow do I want to add here? Yeah, I think just a really subtle amount of yellow, maybe this one. Yeah, so here's white, here's the yellow that I'm going to use. So it's a pale yellow, but an obvious yellow. And I'm just going to use this in a few little spots where some highlights start to pop in. Just a tiny amount of this. So let's see here. A little bit in this area. It's going to be around the highlights. We have a nice bright highlight coming in right here. It's going to look really strange at first, but once I blend it out and then bring the white in for those super popping highlights, this yellow will just give it a bit of sunshine. So just use this color. Use this color just to kind of mark where those bright white highlights are for later application. This cloud down here, nice and yellow. I don't think this would be a considered the silver lining. You probably have a layer or two before that happens. Yeah. So the silver lining that you would be that you're referring to, that is going to be it's a progression. It's not really a thing that happens all at once, because you'll apply some of the white to get that silver lining type of highlight. This you could kind of almost refer to as the first stage of getting the silver lining, because we just want a bit of that yellow. And I'm going to flip my sponge over. I think I just spit on my paper. Alright, and I'm just going to tap this because I don't really want to contaminate it with all the other surrounding colors, especially the blue. So I'm just going to kind of tap it a little bit to push it into the paper. And then once I get this softened, I will I'll probably just grab the white, actually. Yeah, I'll just grab the white, and then we'll go to town on the highlights, and you'll start to see how these clouds come to life. They'll go from a choking smoke to yeah, I don't know what to change them to. Fluffy, peaceful clouds. There we go. Last little bit. Alright, time to grab some white. And let's just start over here, I guess. So I'm gonna just start filling in these shapes here. And again, you don't have to be super exact because we are going to blend these out and it's going to lighten everything up. So it won't stay pure white. It will get quite dark. So use that to get any of the little highlights where the clouds are obviously brighter than what you have them. And then once we blend this out, we'll come back through, and that will be like the I guess the silver lining, the true silver lining. This is kind of the base layer of silver linings. I like to apply this kind of in circular motions to keep that fluffy cloud look. Let's get a little bit of a highlight down here around the bottom. Once we finish these clouds a bit, we'll add the wispiness over top of the blue, and that will finish up the sky. Do I record all my live streams? No, I do not. I've only recorded a couple of them, and the reason I don't is because the camera that you are watching right now it says it records in HD, but it looks like it records in 240 and then stretches it to 1080. It's just a really low quality camera. When I first started live streaming, I tried using my my DSLR, but the problem is that it doesn't have clean HDMI out, and I fried the motherboard, or the main board. It doesn't have a motherboard, it's not a computer. Yeah, so keeping the sensor open for an extended period of time with DSLRs, you can't do that. And I learned the hard way, and I ended up frying the main board, and I had to send it out for like $600 worth of repairs. So fortunately I had insurance on it, so I didn't have to pay it, but I had to get something so that I could continue the live streams, and so I just bought what I thought was going to be a reasonable camcorder that had the features that I needed it to have for me to do live streams. And so unfortunately it records really low quality. It's very grainy, and yeah, it's just low quality, and it's just not my standard. It doesn't meet my standards for my videos. And even though tomorrow I will be releasing a recording from a live stream, I'm doing it just so that I have more content out. And as you see on Patreon, once I reach my goal, which I might reach this month actually, I'll be looking to get a new camcorder that records much better quality, so that I can record the live streams and then create time lapses out of them and do like a short narrated tutorial version over on YouTube. I am recording this sky process because I will share the how to draw or how to paint clouds with soft pastel tutorial. I'll do that. But yeah. Yes, Barbara, I'm pretty sure I got your email, and I responded to all the emails that I had. So you should have check your spam folder. If you didn't get the email, send me another email, because there was only 2 or 3 people that that emailed me after yesterday's live stream to get the blank chart. Oh, hello, Crystal. All right, coming up on the final little bits of cloud. Trust me, this will look a lot different once I blend it out. Right now the white is very, very, very super obvious, and it won't be like that for too much longer. It will take a couple layers to get the highlights to look this bright. And we want the highlights to look this bright, but not this sloppy. Oh, thank you, Lily. I think that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and blend this out now. tissue and make sure my sponge is relatively clean. And I'm just going to come over here and tap it. Just like the yellow, I don't really want the white going all over the place. I just want to push it into the painting. This will dull it out with all of the surrounding grays. It won't be as bright. And then we'll do another layer, build up that texture and detail and softness, and use the shape of your sponge to your advantage also. That's why I like this rounded tip shape sponge. It lends itself really well to doing clouds. Tapping instead of sweeping helps you keep your colors where you placed them much more effectively. So that's, if you're wondering why I'm tapping as opposed to sweeping to blend, it's that's the reason. I put that white there I put that white on purpose there, so if I just start sweeping all the colors together, it's going to just go all over the place, and I'm just going to be left with a big gray blob, but with a lot less room to do details and more layers on. So gotta change up your blending strategy. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Gail. I don't know what took me so long to get on the pastel train. But once I did, I knew that they were going to be one of my favorite mediums. I like them because they're so simplistic. You know, you have to be rather delicate with them, but when it comes to application, there's not a whole lot of mystery to the techniques of application, where when you're dealing with anything paint related, you know, there's endless different brush techniques, shapes of brushes, the dryness of the paint or the wetness of the paint, the everything. But with pastels, the biggest hurdle the biggest hurdle of pastels is just getting good paper. But as soon as you realize that pastel matte is the paper that you need to be using, that just makes it super easy. It's just all fun from there. Pastels to me feel like oil painting with all the difficulties, with all the hurdles taken out, you know, cleaning brushes and using solvents and all of that. All right, now I have a lot of the texture built in. I have all of my placement. I'm gonna do a very light horizontal blend. This isn't really going to take away much of the color, but I just have a bit of texture that I don't want in there. So I'm like barely touching the paper and doing the gentlest brush to just get rid of that little hint of graininess. You probably won't see much changing on camera, but for me, I'm getting rid of just a very subtle grain. It's almost like the dust, just getting rid of a little bit of excess dust. Alright, that should be good enough. Now I'm going to come back with the white again. Bring out some of those highlights some more. Start over here on this time. I'm going to go for just the brightest highlights. So there's going to be a little less white. You don't want to overdo it. This white's going to be brighter than the last pass. The clouds should really start to shine at this stage. You get those bright highlights just right. Should get a nice popping effect. Anywhere you might overdo the highlight, that will just be a spot that you blend out a little bit more to tone down that highlight. So even if you know, you see a spot, like I see this spot on this cloud that is kind of like right here and kind of wraps around like this, and then there's a little bit of a highlight kind of like there. You know, those highlights are far too bright. They're far too bright. So in these sections, I'll just be a bit more heavy-handed with my blending. So for instance, when I tap down that white, I'll just spread it out a little bit more so that it's not so bright. Just tone down that highlight. But you can still see like the right amount of highlight there. These areas, tap those down, lighten or darken this highlight on this part of the cloud. But where I want the highlight to be its brightest white, like here, here, and here and stuff, what I'll do is, instead of brushing the middle part of the highlight, I will only feather out the edges of it. I have not used any pastel ground to make my own surfaces. I've had this question before about making my own pastel surfaces, and the thing is, I already have like a severely shrinking limited space in my flat as is, and the idea of bringing in supplies that require me to make the surfaces that I work on just takes up even more space that isn't quite necessary when I have such access to pastel mat. And so the desire to have to make my own surfaces escapes me completely in this current situation. But I have heard of it, and I've read comments about it working quite nicely and whatnot. But for me in my current position, it is not. It is just not practical for me right now. So for these highlights, these brightest highlights, I'm staying away from where the center application of the white pastel was applied, and instead I'm just kind of working around the edges to get it to blend in naturally with the rest of the cloud. And that makes the white as bright as possible. Or leaves the white as bright as possible. Alright, now it's time to do some wispies in the sky, and I'm going to use this really soft light baby blue, and there's kind of like a wispiness kind of running through the sky right here. So I'm just going to scribble a few lines. There's a little cloud back in there. There's a few little wispies coming up like this. Essentially what you want to do is these wispy little clouds, they tend to look like scribbles. They tend to have a little bit of lines. So draw the direction that they're going, kind of going like this a little bit. And they squiggle, and your precision on these is completely unnecessary. So you have just endless freedom here. And I'm just going to do a few little scribbles. Little wispy cloud here. And then I'm just going to take my sponge brush and gently smooth it out into the blue. Don't take it too far. Don't take it too far. For those clouds that have a little bit of the line to them, you blend them out in that direction a little bit, and then you blend out horizontally. So push it in the direction you want it to wisp, and then gently smooth it out horizontally so that it flows into the sky. But you can see the little wispy clouds, they just kind of fade away into all the dark blue in the back. And for any parts that appear to be a bit brighter, that's where you'll just do another touch of like white, light blue or something like that, and then tap it to get those highlights to show up. So I think I'll take a little bit of baby blue and maybe just add a little bit more. A touch more there, a little bit more over here. And I'll just tap that, soften it, That just gives some of those wispy clouds a bit more volume, because they're not, you know, all perfectly the same. Alright, where else can I improve my clouds? I think what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of medium blue, this not quite dark, yeah, and there's some holes in my clouds, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make sure that I get those holes in the clouds. Getting those little details will help make your clouds just look more realistic. A little bit of blue kind of showing up down here, just a tiny bit. And then we got some blue breaking through right in here. And this part is broken up. It's not a solid cloud there. So just bring in a tiny bit of blue. Let's break this up here too. And the same rules apply with this, you know, in the white, you know, where you need to blend it out more to get the cloud back, and then you tap it where you want to preserve the detail. So let's just get rid of that, and so here I'm just going to tap this blue because I want the sky to show through pretty dominantly on where I placed it. And then down here I don't really want it to show up too much, so I'm going to sweep it away a little bit. Same thing here, I'm just going to sweep it away because it's almost like the cloud just has a bit of transparency, so you see more blue. And then here I want these little bits to be more precise, so I'm going to tap those into place. Gently soften them. Same thing here, just tap those. This here, I just want some translucency, so I'm going to sweep that up a little bit into the rest of the gray. Yeah. Sweep it away a little bit more. And then tap this into place. Tap that into place. There we go. Alright, let's see here. I think that's pretty good. Yeah. I think my clouds are done. So that will be the end of today's tutorial. That actually took much longer than I thought it was going to. Anyways, thank you guys so much for coming by and hanging out. I hope that you like the way this is coming together. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow for the working stream if you happen to be up and about. I'll probably stream for several hours or something like that. And then Thursday we'll start the new colored pencil tutorial. I already uploaded the reference photo and the line art for that. And I'll just, if you happen to have missed it, I'll be working on toned paper for the colored pencil project. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. So take care. Peace.